With this double-stepped motive, our ancestors represented their vision of the cosmogony of the three worlds. What follows is an account of how, in the language of stone, we can trace human history from our origins to the present day. Stone. That most everlasting of all materials is the faithful witness to the research made by the Peruvian Alfredo Gamarra, who after more than 60 years of study across 11 scientific disciplines interpreted the universal message of the cosmogony of the three worlds. The three-sided double-stepped motif was represented in ceramics, textiles, including woven feathers, with 3 windows in one building, or simply with 3 circles made in a single block of stone. The theory rejects the assumption that since the dawn of our existence to the present day, we have been located in the current orbit of 365 days. To the contrary, it has been interpreted on the archaeological level that calendars do exist, which record orbits which differed from our own, indicating that in the past our planet was closer to the Sun. For example, in the time of Hanan Pacha, or First World, this calendar was used. Recognized as the oldest in the world, it records an orbit of 225 days. In the case of Urun Pacha, or Second World, a calendar attributed to the Mayan culture and known as Tzolkin was used, which records an orbit of 260 days. Our present orbit of 365 days was expressed brilliantly by the sacred calendar of Hab, which is also attributed to the Mayan culture. It is important to mention that investigations on the Hab calendar show that the calendar contains references to concepts of time of 365 days, of 260 days, and 225 days, which confirms the presumption of the 3 different worlds. These representations of terrestrial orbits, of which the author says they are located in the biological zone, found expression in the pyramids of ancient Egypt. This concept of 3 orbits of varying size with the Sun at their center was also expressed in the layout of Stonehenge. In the upper part of the pyramid of Borobudur, we again find this universal message of a central sun surrounded by 3 concentric circles. The Muyok Marka, located in the highest section of the Saksai Huaman, represents the same concept of 3 orbits. The ancient legend of Atlantis, as expressed by Plato, describes a capital city whose design was an expression of this universal consciousness.
Haciendo un juicio de al artífice por sus obras, es decir, realizando un análisis de la
Judging the designer by his work
de los diversos estilos en
and
que se
analyzing
expresaron,
the technology
tomando
used
en
and the
cuenta
style
el
employed,
orden de cómo están superpuestos los vestigios arqueológicos en el mundo.
we reach important
La piedra de
conclusions
Cusco nos dará una información
of
con
universal
incidencia
significance.
universal de la historia humana.
The Hanan Pacha. The principal characteristic of Hanan Pacha is the monolithic nature of the designs in stone. The different forms are made in single stones. Made in gigantic blocks, they challenge the imagination of those who seek to establish their original function. Times and forms unrelated to our human experience have been trapped by the stone since then. It is truly remarkable how such a diversity of forms is expressed in a single rock. Here, nothing is made from several stones. Including this complex staircase made in a single piece of rock. Generally, the forms are expressed in situ, made in the living rock of the mountains. In many cases, they are mountains of massive rock, in which the culture of the origin, in various forms, appears. The interior angles of these monolithic forms are always rounded. It has also been shown that the majority of the vestige of Hanan Pacha were made in limestone. The same designs are also found in diorite, basalt, porphyry, granite and andesite. Before this documentary, the technology used to achieve these remarkable results remained a mystery. Enormous structures form the colossal fields of external ruins. Strangely formed porticos lead one into the interior of the gigantic rocks. The light from outside reveals a convex-shaped interior. Shaped stones which can only be compared to the forms achieved using reinforced concrete. Square-shaped sequences on a series of different levels. Interiors where the floor, walls, roof and furniture, such as this altar, are formed from a single rock. Stepped shapes of a modern aspect have been incorporated into the top of this hill to form an altar. Other in situ designs are found on the rock formation known as the Hill of Suchuna. We show another sequence of images showing more details of Hanan Pacha. we will see later, this is a universal culture, which exists on all the continents, characterized by forms which represent the most sacred and oldest culture, the maximum expression of human technology, used to shape stone. We enter the second world, Urun Pacha, where the stone is cellular, unlike that of its predecessor Hanan Pacha, which was monolithic. These buildings, made from blocks from the time of Urun Pacha, are the product of stone being moldable, as well as of a process of vitrification, especially in the treatment of the lateral sides or borders of the stones. The maximum expression of the universal culture of Urun Pacha is found today at the site known as Saksai Huaman. Particularly the courses at the base of the main monument, which are formed from gigantic polygonal blocks, each one being unique. Spectacular porticos ending in terraces which form salients and recesses. The masonry of this structure is finely wrought in exquisitely asymmetrical forms. The other lithical expression of Urun Pacha, the one with its right angles, reaches its apogee in the amazing technology represented by the remains of the interior of Korikancha. Several hypotheses exist regarding the original function of this chamber. But what is clear is that the diverse forms and sophisticated use of stone defy explanation. What we can be sure of is that an advanced civilization created these expressions in the stone of Urun Pacha, with an aesthetic that is not archaic, although being ancient to the contrary, the forms have a modern design. Ukun Pacha, or the third world, is known as the Supaipa Wasin, or House of the Devil, and also as Kai Pacha, or the Here and Now. It is expressed in a cellular architecture using a hammer and chisel to shape the pieces. This can be verified with the presence of small white spots, consequence of the use of hammer and chisel. Practically all the architecture of Ukun Pacha belongs to the Inca period, in what represented their effort to mimic the forms created by their ancestors, the Urun Pacha, without achieving their sophisticated quality. The expression of the latest Inca time was with small stones and with junctions of mud to achieve beautiful results such as this circular temple. In the late Inca period, Adobe or mud bricks were also used. The order of construction is determined by the unquestionable order of the archaeological remains. For example, here we see a form created from the mountain rock by the Hanan Pacha culture, upon which the Urun Pacha culture built this wall. And which culminates, as we can see, in this Urun Pacha portico, anchored on previously existing forms in the rock from Hanan Pacha or First World. At Pisak, the culture of Ukun Pacha has been built upon the culture of Hanan Pacha, particularly at the site of the Intihuatana. This forms in high and low relief, darker in color and monolithic, form a unified whole with the living rock of the mountain. Carefully wrought reverential pieces from Urun Pacha. This is the unquestionable order as determined by the archaeological evidence, with the culture of Hanan Pacha followed by that of Urun Pacha. With the detailed and respectful work of Urun Pacha, it was possible to build perfectly over the many forms of Hanan Pacha. The harmony between these two separate cultures meant that before this evaluation their differences were not apparent. It was seen as an architectural style belonging to the Inca culture. The same reverence for and construction upon the pre-existing culture of Hanan Pacha is found in the archaeological remains of Tambo Machai. In effect, most of the construction is from the Urun Pacha period, but are built upon and around this rock of the Hanan Pacha period. Built upon with great care by the cellular culture. From this side, the stone of Hanan Pacha is visible, and although interrupted by the construction of the Urun Pacha from the Second World, it appears also on top. In order to establish better the construction sequence and to show how many different styles can exist in only one vestige, we will analyze the remains of Kolkampata. We estimate that 85% of the site belongs to the Inca period of Ukun Pacha, although vestiges of the cultures which preceded it exist, such as the use of this Urun Pacha piece as lintel for the Inca niche. A look inside the monument reveals the presence of Hanan Pacha. This double jamb portico from Urun Pacha or Second World has been built upon by the Inca culture of Ukun Pacha or Third World. A close inspection of this portico reveals that, apart from the presence of Hanan Pacha, Urun Pacha can be detected in the interior, built upon by the Incas of Ukun Pacha and crowned by this arched lintel from the colonial period and contemporary architecture. The presence of the Inca culture can be seen in numerous cases. As we can see here, in these examples. These polygonal pieces from Urunpacha form the corners of Cabracancha Street in Cusco and were built upon by the Inca Ucunpacha culture. The same occurred in the street known as Haturumyo, which was built upon by the late Inca culture. At Machu Picchu itself, although the patina of age has covered the vestige, Ucunpacha can be detected in third place, over the architecture of the Second World. In various archaeological sites exist the overconstruction of the three styles from the three different time periods, as in this great example at Tambo Machai. First, below all, we have the presence of the Hananpacha, which proves it's the first style. Constructing precisely over the Hananpacha, we see the second style of Urunpacha, forming a water source. In the third place appears the Ucunpacha, with a construction that exists of small stones and unctions of mud. This composed vision of over-construction gives us the easy to verify historical order. The culture of Hananpacha was revered by the later cellular culture, and this respect is apparent in the way that the Urunpacha culture encircles several forms from the Hananpacha culture with great care and reverence. These loving protective stone arms of Urunpacha envelop the sacred stone of Hananpacha at Pisac. The cellular structure of Urunpacha, known as the tower at Machu Picchu itself, respectfully contains in its interior a piece from Hananpacha. As we do today, the Ucunpacha culture considered sacred the presence of Hananpacha. This is shown by this protective structure of small stones and mud from the late Inca period at the Huaca or sanctuary of Tixi Viracocha in Urco. Sequential or diaphanous forms have been expressed on the surface of hard stone with such facility that one is led to believe that at some point in the remote past the rock was soft enough to be molded. The passage of time has not been able to erase the fresh aspect of the molded stone of the First World. The most coherent explanation of how such designs were left on what must have once been soft stone is found in a work of Alfredo Gamarra. He theorizes that, given the existence of the oldest known calendar, which records an orbit of 225 days, the Earth must have once been closer to the Sun. This would have meant that a reduced gravitational field once governed our planet. In other words, during Hananpacha, the force of gravity on Earth would have been less than it is today. Atmospheric pressure would have been less, and it would have been much easier to mold stone. Clearly, in a reduced gravitational field, it would have been much easier to move the enormous blocks from their quarries to the sites where they were used, a feat which has baffled observers for centuries.
Hubiera posibilitado dichos traslados con gran facilidad.
The ancient legends of Merlin the magician in England and that of the Ñaupas, or the first man in Peru, tell of how the giant stones of Stonehenge and Sacsayhuaman were transported upon the air. The molding of stone not only occurred in Hananpacha, but also in Urunpacha. The evidence is there to see. For example, moving closer, we can see that in this wall at Coricancha, the stone of the lower piece of the wall enters the commissure left by the upper pieces. At several archaeological sites where the walls of the Second World were dismantled, the marks left by the molded stone walls built upon them can be seen. A virtual molded model shows the process used to form the stone, which was not cut or chiseled, but rather molded. The use of molds and high temperatures was applied on the, in that time, less dense and softer stone. The technology with heat and molds applied to our present foam package material give the same expression of forms as in the lithic material of the First World. Here we will show how the monolithic Hananpacha and the cellular Urunpacha show the process of vitrification in the shine seen on the surface of the stone. It is unlike the shine produced as a result of the erosion of a busy thoroughfare or any other well-used stone structure. Vitrification implies a molecular change in the structure of the stone caused by high temperatures which transform the naturally rough surface of the rock to form a bright and shiny finish, such as that found in the interior of the site known as Amaru Machai. This molecular modification caused by temperatures produces a skin or surface layer on the rock. This can be seen in some damaged vitrified stones, where a thin, even layer can be discerned across the vitrified surface. The presence of this stone skin is undeniable, and in ancient times it would have covered the whole piece. During both Hananpacha and Urunpacha, vitrification was used to lend the stonework cohesion, strength and precision. A special process of vitrification was used in the borders of stone blocks of the Urunpacha. The greatest expression of Urunpacha, known today as Sacsayhuaman, was formed in the same way, regardless of its great size and rough surface. The nocturnal illumination of the monument reveals the presence of the vitrified borders. The combined use of molding and heat have given the rough stone a mirror-like finish. The use of molding and heat have given the surface of the stone its metallic sheen. This shine and special texture covers the area originally covered by the mold. Beyond the area covered by the mold, the stone retains its natural texture. The knowledge of vitrification employed by the cultures of Hanan Pacha and Urun Pacha has a special importance. It allows precise and incontrovertible archaeological and historical conclusions to be drawn. For example, applying this knowledge, we can establish with precision the historical reality of Loreto Street in Cusco, which has been attributed to the architecture of the Incas. The two walls which form Loreto were assumed to have been manufactured by the same constructors, namely the Incas, but on closer analysis this proves not to have been the case. Using what Alfredo Gamarra called the flashlight test, we can verify the existence of a wall from the Inca Ukun Pacha, built using hammer and chisel. The same test on the facing wall shows the patina formed by vitrification associated with the pre-Inca Urun Pacha culture. Seen together, the differences in technology are apparent, although the two styles are similar. In the pre-Inca wall of Urun Pacha, one can find these stones, which have been manipulated with molds and vitrification, to be recognized by day and by night. During the making of this film, the Inca wall of this street underwent a restoration process, which was applied to 80% of the wall. The pre-Inca side of the street, having been vitrified, needed no restoration work whatsoever. The characteristics corresponding to the Hanan Pacha culture, to use massable stone, use of molding and heat, and with a style of rounded internal corners, not only exist in Peru. They are to be found on all continents, at the most sacred places.
Con el privilegiado significado de representar a los lugares más sagrados.
For example, in Egypt, protected by the Great Pyramid and below the ground line, we have the subterranean chamber. Since it is free of rubbish, it can be recognized as an Hanan Pacha altar. We compare some principal elements of this chamber with lithic expressions of the Hanan Pacha culture near to Cusco. First, a double altar, rising from the stony floor, divided in two parts by a rectangular shape, the same lithic expression we find here with its monolithic altar in Titicaca, Cusco. The arm on the altar in Egypt is similar to this one on the altar in Amaru Machay, Cusco. We compare also this sign of three faces and these other ones in Cusco. Also on the roof of the chamber there are details with right angles trapped in the stone. It is the same culture that made these designs with this variation of different levels. Also in Egypt, the existence of 3 different worlds can be shown, and in the order determined by human history. The Hanan Pacha in situ can be found in different places. This picture is from Abu Rawash. There also exist Hanan Pacha pieces that show vitrification and an undeniable expression of having been molded. Urun Pacha pieces have a great presence near the Sphinx. In the base of the Menkaure pyramid there is over-construction with stone blocks from Urun Pacha. The same counts also for the base of the Great Pyramid. Without doubt, the Urun Pacha of Osirun and Menkaure is of the same lithic expression that is abundantly present in Cusco. The so-called Eye of Horus of the Great Pyramid contains the 3 different lithic styles. A closer look shows us Hanan Pacha, over-constructed with respect. A similar piece of Hanan Pacha exists in Kenko, Cusco. On the Isle of Malta we find the most abundant expressions of Hanan Pacha and over-constructions of whole Europe. There are pieces of Hanan Pacha so sophisticated as this example, on which the molding technology can be recognized. But the most important of the vestige is this sacred place inside the rock, presently dominated as the Hypogeum chamber. It is a great example of the monolithic Hanan Pacha culture. In Hattusha, Turkey, exists lithic evidences of the 3 worlds. The Urun Pacha style of Hattusha uses the same lithic junctions as those of Cusco. This sacred place called the Tower is related to the origins of the Hittites. It is a construction over a base of Hanan Pacha, very similar to the construction made of the sacred rock of this mountain in Pisak. In Turkey we find also the sanctuary of Yasalikaya, where the lithic expression of Hanan Pacha in situ exists. For example, this kind of a rectangular shape with a low relief and made in molded stone can also be found in different vestiges of Cusco. The lithic expression of the Hanan Pacha we can also find below sea level, near the coast of Japan. It's the place called Yonaguni. Here we see a giant piece of stone with all the characteristics of the lithic culture of the First World. Also on land, Japan has Hanan Pacha culture, the sacred mountain of Masada no Iwafune. Related to the German Olympus exists the vestige of Felsberg, Germany. Here we find the most pure characteristics of Hanan Pacha, as is the presence of vitrification, internal and rounded angles, mold technology, and expressions of molded stone, to be compared with this form, shaped in the sacred rock of Urco, Cusco. close to Salisbury, England, related to times even before the Celts and Druids, we find the archaeological rests of Stonehenge, a vestige of the Urun Pacha, where in the center of the stone circles representing the sun we find a piece of Hanan Pacha, a stone that shows the signs of having been molded. In the sacred city of Jerusalem, below this gilded cupola, and in the hands of the Islam, we find this specially designed structure to protect this very important piece of rock, the relic considered the most sacred of sacred. A view from above shows more details. Since our most remote past, and not depending on which religion was the ruling one, this piece of Hanan Pacha has always been sacred for humanity.
Poseemos la información de los
We have information about other sacred places in the world with the presence of Hanan Pacha culture, and that are not mentioned here. This will be done in a future production that will be called La Huella de lo Sagrado, Prince of the Sacred. Of the total presence on world level of Hanan Pacha, in Peru exists the majority, which counts in favor of the opinion of the author that the sacred places of origin can be localized here.
La geografía peruana, los sagrados lugares del origen.
We invite you to verify in situ what more than a century of dedicated research has now revealed for the first time.